You're listening to the Vocabbett podcast, where I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself using my unique and research-backed story-based method. On this podcast, I'm sharing the best tips and tricks for a more enriched vocabulary and pain-free test day. Hello, and welcome to episode number 12 of the Vocabbett podcast. I'm Erica Abbott, a former English and history teacher, the author of the young adult novel Ahead for Time, and the founder of the vocabulary company Vocabbett. So I don't know why, but there are few things that amuse me as much as a clever insult. Just regular insults are just mean. I'm not amused by them at all. But when I encounter a clever insult, I don't know why, I just get such a kick out of it. So I have on this podcast 4 insults that are brilliant in the British sense of the word, in the sense that they're good, like, darling, that's brilliant. But they're also brilliant literally in that they are rich in SAT words. I'll start with the easiest and then work my way into progressively harder ones. Insult number 1. So I'm rewatching Alias the other day, and if you're not familiar, it's an old spy show, one of my favorites. And I don't know if I should admit this, but there was a scene where this guy was getting, majorly beat up. And the guy who's beating him up, Sloan, yells, "You dim-witted dilettante!" And I probably should have been horrified, like this guy is getting beat up. But I heard that line and I actually started laughing. Dim-witted basically means stupid. And a dilettante is someone who just dabbles in a subject, usually the arts, but without really knowing that much. So it's kind of like a poser. So a dim-witted dilettante is basically a stupid poser, but it has the added advantage of alliteration, and dilettante is often considered an SAT word. So, you dim-witted dilettante is just such a funny insult. Insult number 2. I mentioned last week that another one of my favorite shows is The Girls in Corfu. And I'm not being sponsored by them or anything. I just really love this show. And I mentioned that the youngest son, Jerry, is obsessed with animals. And in one of the episodes, he's bringing home some new creature or another and asks his older brother what he thinks they should name it. And the older brother doesn't even look up. He's on his typewriter and he just goes, "I don't believe in naming animals. Anthropomorphism is for half-wits." And if you're not familiar, anthropomorphism is giving human characteristics to non-humans. That root anthro means human, so anthropology is the study of humans. Anthropomorphism is giving human traits to non-humans. We often talk about anthropomorphism when we're talking about Greek and Roman mythology. The gods were very anthropomorphic. They acted like humans. They would get in fights and play pranks on each other. So in The Girls in Corfu, when the older brother is saying naming a pet is anthropomorphism, he's saying it's giving a human trait a name to a non-human. It's less funny once you break it down, but that older brother has just such good one-liners. "I don't believe in naming animals. Anthropomorphism is for half-wits." Brilliant insult number 3 comes from a show that I would actually not personally recommend. As you can probably tell, I love British TV. So I tried this one out, but I actually found it a little weird, so I wouldn't personally recommend it, but obviously watch whatever you want. It's called Green Wing, and one of the characters was an elitist guy trying to insult someone on a bus, and he yelled, "Everyone knows buses are just bovine asylums." And while I didn't really care for the show, I obviously found that line unique enough to write it down at least 5 years ago when I watched this show. I had no idea what I was going to do with it, but I just liked the line, and here it is, coming in handy a few years later. Bovine is SAT speak for cow, so he's basically saying a bus is a mental institution for cows. And maybe it spoke to me so much at the time because I was living in New York when I watched this and taking a lot of buses, and I definitely just felt like we were a bunch of cows getting shepherded around. But anyway, brilliant insult number 3 is, "Everyone knows buses are just bovine asylums." And brilliant insult number 4 is not from a TV show, but from a book. Anyone who knows me will not be surprised that the author is Elizabeth Peters. The insult comes from the character Ramses in Deeds of the Disturber. Ramses is the name she gave to a modern boy. We're not talking about like an ancient pharaoh right now. And in this book, he is this still very precocious, very intelligent child, and he calls his odious cousin Percy a confounded coprolite. Like dim-witted dilettante, this insult has the added advantage of alliteration. Both words start with the same letter, dim-witted dilettante, confounded coprolite, and a confounded coprolite basically means you are a stupid old piece of poop. And a huge thanks to the Elizabeth Peters fandom on Twitter for this one. We were all recently talking about our favorite words that we learned from the Amelia Peabody books, and this one was a real gem that came out of that thread. So let's break it down a little bit. Confounded is a term that's used to add emphasis, but at its root is the word confound, which means to confuse. If someone is confounded in something, it means that they're confused. So basically stupid. A coprolite is a fossilized piece of dung. So if you want to be clever in your insults, don't call someone a stupid piece of old poop. Call them a confounded coprolite. Or better yet, just be nice to everyone. All right, those were 4 brilliant insults that I have come across in television and literature. I will be back on Thursday with another vocabulary boosting podcast for you guys. If you are enjoying improving your vocabulary this way, I would love to have your support. You can pledge a few bucks a month just to help me defray the hosting costs and everything else on Ko-fi. Basically, it's Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Vocabbett. It started because it was like, buy this person a coffee, like Ko-fi for, all they're doing for you. And I will see you on Thursday. Thanks again.